Okay, today we're looking at polygons and we're going to try to figure out how angles work with polygons of different number of sides. So let's start with our basic triangle that we've been working on for the last little while. We know that in a triangle all the angles inside a triangle add up to 180 degrees, and we proved that it has to be 180. So in this case I've got a triangle drawn with 40, 60, and 80, so all the angles interiors, all the interior angles of a triangle add up to 180. Okay, so we got one triangle, they add up to 180, and now we want to look at what happens to the exterior angles, and in this case when we talk about exterior angles we're talking about the supplementary exterior angles. Okay, so for this, if we look at the triangle, we could figure out what all the exterior ones are. So if we just made a 180 line, it doesn't matter which way we would draw them because it's the same either way. So we'd have, if that angle's 40, the supplementary would be 140. And in this case, if one's 80, the other one has to be 100. And down here, if it's 60, the other one has to be 120, right? Because all those have to add up to 180 to be a supplementary angle. So now if we add up all those blue ones, we have 100 plus 140 plus 120, that will add up to 360. Okay, so for any triangle it doesn't matter what size and shape we make it. So let's just do another quick one. If we took a look at a different triangle, and let's suppose I made them, let's do an equilateral where all three angles are 60, so you'd have 60, 60, 60, so the interiors do add up to 180. And our exteriors would be 120, 120, and 120. So those still add up to 360. So regardless of how you draw the triangle, all the interior angles add up to 180, all the exteriors add up to 360. So now let's start looking at different polygons. Okay, so let's do number of sides. Okay, so we had a triangle was 3 sides, we got 180 and 360. So let's see what happens now when we do a 4-sided shape. So let's do, and it can be a square, rectangle, whatever. So let's suppose we get one angle of 90, another angle of 90, and let's suppose this angle down here would be 110. And let's suppose the other one is 70, something like that. So if you actually draw a polygon and measure all the angles, like we know if it's a square, they're all 90, so you'd have 90, 90, 90. Actually, let's do a square first. So if we had a square or a rectangle, we'd know all the angles are 90s. So you'd see that our interior angles then add up to 360. And let's figure out our exteriors. So if that's 90, we'd have an exterior of 90, 90, 90 again, and 90 again, so our exterior is still 360. So you can see it's a little bit of a different pattern for the interior angles, but the exteriors seem to be the same. So let's just look at any kind of 4-sided shape. It doesn't matter how big the angles are. The easiest way to help you figure out the pattern is you could take that 4-sided shape, if you cut it down diagonally, we'd have 2 triangles, and we know that each triangle adds up to 180. So therefore, if you have 2 triangles, then you would have 180 for each. So that means our total interior angles should add up to 360, which we figured out that if it was a square. Okay, so what you want to do then is, if it's a 4-sided shape, you want to think of it as being how many triangles do you have. So you had a 4-sided shape, we got 2 triangles. So let me change our little chart here that we got going on. So we'd have number of sides and number of triangles. Okay, so when we had a 3-sided shape, that was 1 triangle. When we had a 4-sided shape, we could actually draw 2 triangles in it. And so that gave us a total of 360 because each triangle was 180, and we still got 360 for our exterior. Okay, so now let's do one more. Let's do a 5-sided shape and see what happens. So let's draw any 5-sided shape. Okay, let's use the triangle idea. How many ways can we divide it into triangles? So we can get one triangle like that, another triangle like that, and another triangle like that. So you can see now we have 3 triangles on the inside. So 5-sided shape makes 3 triangles. Each triangle is 180, so if you go 180 plus 180 plus 180, that would give you 540 degrees. And we can figure out the exterior in a minute. So you can see 5-sided shape, 3 triangles, 3 times 180. So all we're doing for each of these is timesing by 180. Okay, so that gave us the total interior angles. So now, if we know that the total 5-sided shape, so let me just resketch it here. If we had our 5-sided shape, we know that our angles are 540. So if the 5-sided shape, let me redraw it. So if our 5-sided shape was a regular shape, which means all 5 sides are the exact same length, so that means our sides and angles would be the same. So if we know the total is 540, right? We just figured out that our total is 540. We could divide it by 5, and that'll tell us that each angle then would be 108. So you can always figure out what each angle is just by dividing the sides if it's going to be all the same. So each angle is 1/8. So now when we do our exterior, we use the 180 rule, so we'd have 72 for each, so we'd have 72 all the way around. So if each inside angle is 108, each outside angle is 72, the insides add up to 540, and if we go 72 times 5, because it was a 5-sided shape, so 72 times 5, we still get 360. So you can see just so far we got a pattern going on here, and we can continue this as many times as we want, but we're going to get the same sort of pattern over and over again. So if we had a 6-sided shape, right, a 6-sided shape, let me just draw this one quick. So if we had a 6-sided shape, we could then make 4 triangles. And so if we had 4 triangles, we times that by 180. 4 times 180 is 720. And our exterior would still be 360. So you can see the pattern is, all we need to know is the number of sides of the triangle. So if we know that we have n number of sides of the shape, it can be a rectangle, pentagon, hexagon, decagon, whatever. If we know the number of sides, all we do is we're taking that number of sides, subtracting 2, right, 6 to 4, 5 to 3, and then we're timesing it by 180, and that gives us our total sum of our interior angles. And that's it. So the formula that we use on your formula sheet, it's written as the sum of interior angles equals 180, so 180 degrees times n minus 2. And that is for an n-sided shape. So sum of interior angles for n sides equals 180 times n minus 2. So that's the formula we're going to use. So let's just look at one. If I gave you an octagon, okay, so we have an 8-sided shape. So if we have 8 sides, we can use the formula to go 180 times 8 minus 2, so that'd be 180 times 6, and so 180 times 6 is 1080. So that means we know that the sum of all those octagon angles add up, have to be 1080. So if the question was what's the total, your answer is 1080. If the question asked how many does each angle, would each angle be, so you'd go 1080 divided by 8, and that would give you 135. So for an 8-sided shape, the sum is 180, or 1080, and if we want to figure out each angle, just divide by 8, so that means each angle all the way around. If it's an equal sized octagon, so that means all sides are the same, that means all angles have to be the same as well, so you'd have 135 for each. And so that means our exterior angles would be 45, and if you go 45 times 8, the exterior will still be 360. Okay, so exterior angles always equal 360 no matter how many sides it has. interiors, you just have to use the formula to figure out what the total is for the middle. Then you can divide them to figure each of them out. So let's look at an example. So let's suppose you get a question. What's going to happen now is you're going to combine these types of questions with the old stuff. So you're going to have triangles or five-sided shapes or whatever mixed up with other kinds of questions. So let's just draw one out here. So if I gave you, okay, so let's suppose we have a shape like this. We have a hexagon, we have a six-sided shape. So all of these sides are going to be the same. So all six, all the way around the outside are going to be the same. And then we also have let's suppose we have an equilateral triangle at the bottom. So all three of these sides are the same. And then we're going to cut that hexagon in half. So in this case, the question could be, what are the angles A, B, C, D? So we have no other numbers given to us. These two lines will end up being parallel. That's the only other bit of information we have. So with this kind of question, you can see we got sort of combining a whole bunch of different things we got going on. So the first step would be, let's figure out what each angle is in the hexagon. So we have a six-sided shape. So if we go 6 minus 2 times the 180, so 180 times 4 gives us 720. So we know that all the angles add up to 720. If we divide it by 6, because there were 6 sides, we get 120. So that means each of the interior angles on the hexagon are going to be 120. So you can see that letter C now is 120 degrees. Okay, so all those angles are 120. We could keep on going around if we needed to, but that's all we needed to find was letter C. So we're good. We've got our letter C is 120. So now we can see, we can figure out letter A. Once we know C and A are making a straight line, so that's a 180 rule. So then A would have to be 180 minus 120, which would give you 60. And because they're equilateral, we would know then all three angles in the triangle are the same. So if that one's 60, the other one has to be 60 as well. And this one would also be 60 if we needed to know it, but we don't in this case. So the only other one we got left is letter D, angle D. So we know if that's 120 from the original, this has to be 120. And now, because they're both the same, that means this angle, letter D, and this angle up here, let's just call it E. So D and E would have to be the same as well. And because now we have a four-sided shape, we can figure out that a four-sided shape would be 180 times 4 minus 2, which would be 2, so that would equal 360. So we know our four-sided shape has to be 360. We already know one angle is 120 and the other one's 120. So that means we have 120 left over, and because those are both the same, D and E have to be the same. So if we divide 120 by 2, then we know that D has to be 60 as well. Okay. Another way we could do it is go back to our very first topic. You can see we got parallel lines. So if that line and that line are parallel, that means this angle 60 will correspond to that angle. So that has to be 60 as well, using corresponding angles. So you can see we get a few different ways of solving this. And the same thing if we wanted to do corresponding. A we already calculated was 60, so we could have figured out that E was 60 as well using corresponding, and that maybe would help us figure out D as well. So what's going to happen is you're going to get questions that have polygons. You're going to have to figure out the angles, interior angles, and then use all of our other old rules as well to solve for missing questions. And that's all.